Intermittent fasting simply refers to the practice of eating within a restricted window of the day. Meaning, if you normally eat breakfast at 7 o'clock and have dinner at 8 o'clock, you'd be eating within a 13-hour window. Now, intermittent fasting, as it's marketed right now, and most of this stuff comes from marketing terms, let's be honest. Like, there's the 16-hour fasting window is what people technically consider intermittent fasting. So that means you 16-hour fast and then you eat within an 8-hour window of the day. Most of the studies referencing intermittent fasting that are talking about the benefits of it, like elevated growth hormone, decreased inflammation, increased autophagy, these studies are referring to longer extended fasts, like 48 hours, especially the growth hormone one. That's after like 48 or 72 hours, not 16 hours. So just throwing that out there, a lot of the claims being made about IF are a little bit extraneous in my opinion. But yeah, when is the best time to eat when you're doing intermittent fasting? I'm gonna give you an answer that might be different from what you've heard before. Most people will tell you push back breakfast. You don't need breakfast at all when you're intermittent fasting. You wanna push back that first meal as long as you can. Let me tell you why I think this is not the optimal way to do it, and teach you the way that I've been teaching clients and that I've been using myself and that Jessica uses to properly intermittent fast and entrain our circadian rhythm to allow optimal hormone production throughout the day, optimal sleep and recovery, and performance both cognitively and physically throughout the day. So, I invert intermittent fasting. Most people push breakfast back. What I do when I intermittent fast is I eat breakfast. Let me tell you why. I mentioned the word circadian rhythm a moment ago. The circadian rhythm in all mammals, in all creatures, in all organisms is super important. And the circadian rhythm is simply refers to the rhythm of our biological rhythms in synchronization with the light cycles around us. So when we wake up in the morning, something really amazing happens. We open our eyes, the natural light, hopefully natural light, like from a window or going outside into the sunshine, into nature, not artificial fluorescent light, but that natural light will hit our eyes. It'll go through our eyes and go through the suprachiasmatic nucleus. The suprachiasmatic nucleus is not, it's not an album by P-Funk. And it's not, I don't know, it's not like the place where stars are born. The suprachiasmatic nucleus is in your brain. It's actually a collection of neurons that are the central clock of our body. That central clock of our body is activated by light cycles, yokes us and couples us to the light cycles in our environment, tells us when to sleep, tells us when to make cortisol, tells us when to make testosterone, basically switches on all of the biological clocks in our body to synchronize the biorhythms in our body throughout the day so we can function. Now, what the heck does this have to do with intermittent fasting? Well, intermittent fasting is all about meal timing, right? People pushing back breakfast, eating within a restricted window, leveraging the hormonal responses and that mild ketotic state where we're using fatty acids for fuel because we've run out of glycogen. And the presence of those ketones, which are powerful signaling molecules, can turn on, turn off certain genes, can create more of an environment that's conducive to fat burning rather than burning sugar and carbohydrates, and this can result in fat loss for a lot of people, reduced hunger throughout the day. That's the key there. The ketones reduce hunger. They don't make it because intermittent fasting doesn't work because if you just fast but you eat the same amount of calories, you'll lose weight. No, it helps you restrict the amount of food that you eat through inducing satiety. So, what does this have to do with circadian rhythm? So you wake up in the morning, light hits the suprachiasmatic nucleus in our brain, lights up our body, and creates this whole cascade of rhythms, of hormone production, and of life in our body. When we wake up in the morning, there's a hormone called cortisol. Cortisol rises in the morning. Cortisol is not bad. Cortisol is not the enemy of humanity. In fact, we need cortisol. Cortisol is really good. In its proper context, right? Just like ketones. Ketones can be really beneficial in their context, but if they get out of control in type 1 diabetics, it can be another story. So, just like anything in the body, it's about context and balance. Systems within systems within systems operating together in concert and unison in this beautiful symphony that becomes this little flesh vessel that allows us to live. So cortisol rises in the morning, raises up our blood sugar to give us energy. Now, how do we stop that cortisol rise, and why would we want to stop it? Well, we want to stop the rise of cortisol because cortisol is also catabolic, whereas it's got anti-inflammatory properties, very beneficial for waking us up. It's also, if it's extended for too long, it could be more catabolic because it breaks down muscle tissues and amino acids to create glucose, to send it to the liver, to send the glycogen stores throughout the body so that we can function. If we don't blunt that cortisol response, cortisol keeps getting pumped out throughout the day. So eating breakfast first thing in the morning can set us up metabolically, first of all, to not be as hungry later in the day because of the circadian rhythm that we're in training, but also can blunt that cortisol response and stop catabolism. Stop that stress hormone from flowing through our body for too long, because when that stress hormone is elevated over an extended period of time, it can become catabolic and lead to inflammatory processes in the body. All right, so pushing back breakfast when you're doing intermittent fasting, as I've seen in so many female clients who've come to me, been doing a ketogenic diet with intermittent fasting, they got results for a while, but then they just got burned out. Because it's all about context. Sometimes a ketogenic diet and intermittent fasting are not the answer. Sometimes we have to look deeper at what's going on here. So a lot of women actually end up having issues with their hormones throughout the day because of intermittent fasting. They can get poor sleep. And I don't know why. I haven't really delved deep into speculation on why females tend to have a little bit harder time with fasting than males, but I'm pretty sure it's been scientifically proven as well. But it's something that I've observed over a long period of time. Women tend to do not as well with intermittent fasting, especially when they're skipping breakfast. But when you introduce breakfast, and a lot of these individuals who are having that stress response from pushing it back for too long, a lot of the times, even in isocaloric situations, I've seen people begin to lose body fat again, simply by skewing the calories earlier in the day. So what the heck is going on here? Well, our central circadian rhythm, our central clock, is always driven by light. So when the sun comes up, we want to wake up. When the sun goes down, we want to sleep. We are tied to our environment. This is how plants work. It's how all animals work. We can't just look at the organism as if it's somehow put in this little box. You know, we can't just myopically look at the one part. The organism is working and living within inside a living system, the environment. So, the environment trains our circadian rhythm. You wake up in the morning, you see that light, you wake up. Shift workers are predisposed to diabetes, cancer, inflammatory diseases, and chronic diseases far more than people who don't do shift work. Why is this? Because every single hormonal rhythm of our body is trained by the light cycles around us. But there's also, in our human circadian rhythm, we have what's called the peripheral circadian clocks. So, the suprachiasmatic nucleus is the central clock, light hitting the eye, environmental light, natural light cycles. But you can also train other circadian clocks using things like food and meal timing. So, meal timing is actually a really powerful way to train your circadian, your peripheral clocks. When you wake up in the morning, you feed yourself in the morning. It sets you up hormonally to not be hungry later on in the day. Even if you eat when you're not hungry. Now, a lot of people, they wake up in the morning and they're just not that hungry. If you're trying to lose body fat, hear me out here. Sometimes it's far better to eat when you're not hungry than to push those meals back to far later in the day to when you're so hungry. When I first started doing intermittent fasting like 5 or 6 years ago, I found that I felt awesome in the fasting window. But as soon as I got in that first meal, I was so hungry by the time I got that meal in. I was working out a lot, I was building muscle at the time. And when I finally got my meal in, I would be so ravenous that I would like overeat, and I would just feel, my blood sugar would drop and skyrocket, and I was obviously having blood sugar dysregulation from those meals, and it wasn't optimal for me. And it led me to maybe eating more in one sitting than I normally would have eaten had I just ate before I got super hungry. So, not only when you eat breakfast are you setting your circadian rhythm for the day, blunting that cortisol response, which can be catabolic, and promoting anabolism by giving ourselves the amino acids, fatty acids, or carbohydrates that you require if you're on a carbohydrate-based diet. As most of you know, I prefer to do a ketogenic diet most of the time, although I eat carbs in their context. I don't think carbs are bad. But when you eat breakfast, you're blunting that cortisol response, and you're also, if you're eating before you get hungry, it's kind of like you're covering your bases before it even happens. You know, that potential stumbling block of the extreme hunger, of the hangry, I have to eat now or I'm gonna crash and burn, you don't get that feeling anymore, and you don't end up overeating and eating more than you need. So you strike before the iron gets hot, and you can get really good results. So anyways, I flip intermittent fasting on its head. Most of the intermittent fasting gurus out there, they're just repeating information, right? Come on, this is the internet. Everybody's just repeating what other people are saying. They find some fad, they repeat it, they market it. That's how the intermittent fasting thing is working right now. Yes, fasting can have incredible benefits, but so can eating breakfast. When they did studies on people with isocaloric diets, people fed earlier in the day lose more body fat than people fed later in the day. Also, it takes about 4 hours to empty our stomach. When our stomach is digesting food, when we're digesting, it takes a lot of energy. There's enzymatic processes that have to happen. We have to create certain hormones. It is not an easy thing on the body. It's actually stressful on the body to put food in it, especially large amounts of food. So if we put a lot of food in at the end of the day, it takes about 4 hours to empty the stomach and thus get restful sleep. Sleep is super, super crucial for reducing our inflammation, for actually healing from the damage that we've done to our body throughout the day through exposure to resistance physically, breaking down of tissues, through exposure to environmental toxins, through exposure to just the natural environment, to oxygen. We have to downregulate and sleep at night. We can't do that when we're full of food. So eating earlier in the day can have great benefits for your sleep, for your recovery, and if you're working out. Most people that do intermittent fasting, some people enjoy working out fasted and they do fine, but a lot of people find that they do much better if they work out after a meal. Also, some studies seem to suggest that the anabolic response, not the anabolic response, but it might be more beneficial for long-term muscle building and maintenance of skeletal muscle to have food in your body and have a meal in before intense training. So I know if I'm going to train hard, I like to have a meal at least an hour or two before that training session, an hour or two out. I don't like to eat right before a training session, but I don't like to go into it, 16 hours fasted, because then I'm hungry. So anyways, there's my little rant on why I invert intermittent fasting and why I eat breakfast. Because sometimes it's not just about what you do. It's usually about why you do it, right? But sometimes it's also about when you do things. It's about timing. Music, art, conversation, love. It's all about timing sometimes. When you say the right thing. When you put that food in your body, and when you skip a meal. So anyways, if you're doing intermittent fasting and you push breakfast back to the end of the day and you find yourself overeating, feeling bloated, not sleeping so well, not performing optimally, why don't you try skewing those calories to early in the day? Eat within an hour of waking up, get outside, and train your circadian rhythm to the natural light of the sun. Get that nitric oxide production, the vitamin D, that melanin flowing through your body in the morning when you get that natural light on your skin, and set your circadian rhythm for the day so that you can sleep better at night. But also setting your peripheral clocks using food and in training your body to use those calories early in the day and skip dinner instead of breakfast. Try it out. If you think I'm wrong, go try it for yourself. All right. So do a little bit of research also. If you think I'm full of it, do some research on meal timing for diabetics, on the circadian rhythm. There's a really interesting article called The Central and Peripheral Circadian Clocks in Mammals. Let's see. There's loads of articles out there on the circadian rhythm, on the importance of meal timing, and why it's not just important what you eat or how much you eat. Sometimes it's just as important when you eat. Alright, you can find more at primaledgehealth.com. If you're doing intermittent fasting and a ketogenic diet or a low-carb diet or just healthy whole foods-based diet that includes healthy fats, you got to check out my wife Jessica's book, the Ketogenic Edge Cookbook, a training manual for low carbohydrate, ketogenic, and paleo cuisine. It's all whole foods based, no refined junk food recipes, all relatively simple recipes using ingredients you can get anywhere. And this book is essentially a training manual that we designed for people like us and for clients of ours. We basically wanted to make a book that we would have wanted when we started keto. So check it out. It's available exclusively at primaledgehealth.com. It's not just a list of recipes. It's a training manual. It even teach you how to make organ meats delicious. Like, a lot of people think that organ meats are like taboo, right? Because for some reason in our society we hyper focus on the muscle meats. But foods like heart and liver, apex predators go for those first for a reason. Because they're the most nutritious parts of the animal. So we teach you how to use those and make them delicious. There's an entire section on vegetables, on meats. It is a comprehensive training manual for cooking keto. So check it out. The Ketogenic Edge Cookbook, a training manual for low carbohydrate, ketogenic, and paleo cuisine. That's only available at primaledgehealth.com. Get outside, get some natural light, go and train your circadian rhythm, go enjoy life, get off social media, get off the nonsense, get away from the TV, and do something meaningful. See you guys next time.
In the life, it is our own sweet life. We're coming in from the cold. Whoa. We're coming in, coming in, coming in, coming in. Coming in from the cold. It's you, it's you.